Alright guys, hey, how's it going? So, my name is James. I'm the JFK Hub Manager here at Delta Virtual Airlines, and what I want to do today is I'm going to go through and teach you how to fly a pattern with the CRJ-700 default in FSX. Basically, what we're going to do here, I'm actually on 7 left here at Los Angeles International using the FS Stream Team scenery add-on. And we're going to go through and fly a pattern. It's going to be a left pattern, basically do some touch and goes, kind of walk you through how to go through and take off in this aircraft and then go through the landing procedures. Now, I'm not going to stick to the exact real world rules and regulations around this, really. Right now, this is primarily just focusing on actually getting your landing rates where you want them to be, taking off and being able to fly the aircraft fairly proficiently. So what we're going to do is use the GPS built into the CRJ-700 default in FSX. We're going to first go to the JAVC VOR, which is Juliet Alpha Victor Sierra India. Then we're going to go to the Pier VOR, Papa Echo 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 Romeo. And then we're going to go to the, looks like, let's see here, using a program called FS Commander actually for the navigation side of this. Then we're going to go to the Grays VOR, Golf Romeo Alpha Yankee Sierra, to finally make that base turn and then turn final there for 07 left. So enjoy the ride. Basically, I'm going to try and talk through most of the steps here that I go through. Right now we're sitting on 7 left, like I mentioned a second ago. We've got the APU running, so that's why all of our instruments are running there. What we're going to do here is start up the aircraft. Really simple process. You have 2 ways of doing it. The easy way to do it for beginners is Control Echo on your keyboard. That will go ahead and get your engine started automatically. But we're going to go ahead and do it the manual way here. So follow along here, and we'll go through and get this set up. And of course, you see that the APU is already on there. That's necessary for powering all of your electronics on board while the engines are off, as well as getting the engine started here. Next step is to turn your packs off. Now, unfortunately, the CRJ-700 default really doesn't show that really well. So all we're going to do here is go ahead and cut the engine fuel lines on here. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So looking down here, you have 2 red levers next to your throttle quadrant there. Hit the first one there for engine 1. And then you go up to, let's see here, it's been a while since I've done it manually here. Alright, then you go ahead and turn your ignition system on there. That's the master switch. And then left engine start button right there. You're going to hear it start to spool up there. You'll see your N1 there climbing. And go ahead and just wait for it to get a good solid start. Now, of course, make sure that your parking brake is set during this part of the process. Otherwise, your plane's going to start rolling down the runway without you. Alright, just waiting for everything to kind of calm down here on the left-hand side. Settles out normally just around 30 N1 there. 34, good enough. Alright, so you see right gen fail. Don't worry about that. That's just telling you that the right engine, or engine number 2, isn't running right now, and that's why you're getting that warning. So not a big deal there. You're the pilot, you know what's going on. That's just there for reference. So let's go ahead and get engine 2 started here. And you'll remember that we already got our fuel going for engine 1. Now we're going to get fuel cut on there for engine 2. Go back up to our overhead and click the start button. Again, this isn't how the real world does it, because of course this is a simulation using a default aircraft in FSX. But this will really get you up and running there using the CRJ-700 simulation. Alright, so same process here, just waiting for N1 to hit about 34.2, you know, match up with engine 1 and engine 2. Now, it's really important in your takeoff roll that both of those numbers, 34.2 on the left and 34.2 on the right, both increase at the same rate and stay the same during takeoff. Otherwise, you do have N1 synchronization issue. Basically, what that means is your engines aren't responding the same way to your input on your throttles. If you do notice that the N1 doesn't match up on both engines there, immediately perform a rejected takeoff. Of course, unless you're above V1, which in that case you would go ahead and take off and follow engine out procedures. But we'll go into that a little bit later on. Today we're just going to focus again on flying the circuit here. Alright, now that we have our engine started up, we're going to bring up the GPS by pressing Shift 3. And I've kind of cheated here. I got ahead of us here. Went ahead and put in Juliet Alpha Victor Sierra India. That's our first waypoint. It's just a little bit to the left of the runway heading there. So initially we're going to fly runway heading. Then we'll make that left turn to intercept JAVC. And then we'll put in the other waypoints here. So let's get JAVC put in there. Hitting enter 3 times to make that our target. And then once up in the air and we're headed toward JAVC, we'll go ahead and put in the pier VOR that we talked about a second ago. So let's go ahead and get this bird in the air. Going to the 2D panel is my personal favorite. It gives you the most functionality without having to worry about your viewpoints and everything in the virtual cabin. Now, of course, a lot of people like the virtual cockpit view. It is a cool cosmetic feature, but again, for functionality and pilots that have been doing this a while, a lot of them do prefer the 2D panel, especially for takeoffs. But what we're going to do is set our auto throttle here to 200 knots. Now, it's a little bit slower than normal. If we were actually doing a flight, we'd want it about 240. Maintaining that 250 speed limit under 10,000, but we're going to set it to 200 here for the takeoff. And we're going to climb to an altitude of 4,000 feet. Again, a little bit lower than normal. Initial climb out would normally put you out at about 8,000 per air traffic control instructions there. But again, we're going to keep it low, keep it slow, just as we go into this circuit here. Keep it really simple, really easy for us here. And moving our switch from nav to GPS here. What that does is tells the aircraft to follow the GPS heading once we do engage the autopilot here. Flight director, we're going to turn that on. Now you'll notice the magenta arrow up here. What that does is gives you a really good idea of what you should be doing based on what you've told the autopilot when you're manually flying the aircraft. Now you notice we don't have any flaps, so we're going to go ahead and put our flaps down 2 notches here. And now we have the green line there indicating that the flaps are down. We have 3 green, gear down. Of course, we always want to make sure that our gear are functioning properly here. So let's go ahead and start our takeoff roll. Initially, we're going to put the throttle to 25%, which will allow us to make sure that the N1s are responding as they should. We talked about that a second ago. Those are displayed right here at the top of your flight display. And then we'll increase throttle to 100%, about 30 seconds after putting it at 25%. And then we're going to take off at about 170 knots. That's when we want to start pulling up on the throttle, very relaxed. And then we'll get up to our cruising altitude, which again is 4,000 feet. Make that left turn to JAVC, and then make that left turn again to pier, and then make another left turn to intercept the VOR as we head on back into 7 left here. So enjoy the ride. I'm going to try to walk you through with narration as we go here, but I want to make sure you understand everything, so that's why I'm kind of walking you through with baby steps here. So let's go. Disengage parking brake with the period button. Alright, throttle at 25%, and ones appear to be responding normally. Increasing throttle to 100% power now as we continue our runway roll off here. Passing 80 knots. Applying a little bit of forward pressure on the yoke here just to keep the plane's nose down until we hit about 160. Alright, 160, rotate. slowly pull back on the throttle. About a 10-degree climb is what you want right now. And now you're going to reduce throttle here to maintain about 200 knots. Alright, so we're up in the air now. The gear is up by hitting the G key. And engaging autopilot here just to help out while we make this video for you. And bringing up the GPS with Shift 3. Again, we haven't left runway heading yet. Alright, and I'm going to wait till we get just past this green line here. That'll bring us to a 90-degree turn to the left there to bring us to heading 270 to intercept Jazzy there. Again, maintaining runway heading here, climbing up through 2,400 for 4,000 feet. Notice flaps are still down at 8 degrees. We're going to leave them down for the entire circuit here, just because we're not going to hit about 220 knots. We're going to stay well below that flap limit there. Alright, taking another look here at the GPS, we're almost to our turn here. You'll notice the runway's directly behind us now. And we'll be flying over the coast there, making a nice approach into 7 left here as we make our left circuit. Alright, we're right at 4,000 feet, right where we want to be. And we're going to go ahead and make that turn now to JAVC. We do that by telling the nav system to engage. We already told it to follow the GPS here. Now again, this is a lazy way of doing it. You can hand fly this. I encourage you to hand fly it the first time. Just with me having to kind of push some buttons on my side to manage this video here, I'm going to use the autopilot just to show you the process here and the procedures. And again, we got those VORs by using a program called FS Commander, and I'll go ahead and put a link to it in the comments section there. It's really a great piece of software. A little bit outdated, but really gives you a lot of room to work there. Alright, so it looks like we're just about 10 miles from JAVC. Correction, 3 nautical miles from JAVC there. I'm going to go ahead and preload our next VOR here. And that VOR is Papa Echo 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 Romeo. So let's put that in here. Just typing it in there on the keyboard. And for some reason the GPS doesn't have this fix in it, so FSX is a little bit outdated. So instead what we're going to do is just turn our direct heading here, so manually inform the aircraft what to do. Now the reason that the aircraft turned there without me telling it to is we were actually over the JAVC VOR, and the GPS will automatically circle the VOR that you send it to if you don't give it further instruction to turn. But now we're overriding the GPS and we're controlling the direction of flight manually using our heading indicators. So at this point the GPS is almost irrelevant except for giving us a reference as to where we're located. And again, making small adjustments here to our heading to confirm that we're going to head directly for that Papa Echo 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 Romeo VOR. Unfortunately, it just wasn't in the GPS system. That's really weird. And again, I am cheating a little bit here because I'm using that FS Commander program. It tells me exactly where I am with a full screen navigation aid there, and also tells me where the other traffic is. So it's really a great tool to use on VATSIM because you really get to see what the air traffic controller is seeing. But I have it displaying the VOR, so I'm able to navigate directly to it. We'll look around here a little bit just to kind of show you where we're at in relation to the airport. You'll notice we're now doing what's called a downwind. So 7 left is what we took off from. 7 left is this strip right along here. We took off there. If you want to follow our vertical travel there, it's just like that. So now we've made a 90-degree left turn and then another 90-degree left turn. And so really what we've done is this kind of motion right here, and what we're going to do is continue to go back down, make another left 90-degree turn, intercept the localizer, and then descend right in. So right now I'm going to actually tune in the frequency for 7 left into the ILS to give us a good reference point for our approach. And again, using FS Commander here, I'm able to see that the frequency is 111.1 for 07 left. Now that I have that punched into my nav1 radio, I'm going to get rid of the radio stack here. And then now, since I'm using my heading indicator and heading button to control the heading of the autopilot, I can flip this over to nav. What nav does is it now is reading off of the ILS radio frequency that's coming from 07 left. You'll notice that we have 2 magenta diamonds here. What this does is tells us where we are in relation to 07 left. Now, whenever you're going in the opposite direction of the runway, performing what's called, again, a downwind, completely ignore this because it is inaccurate. Because everything is it's kind of like looking in a mirror. The frequency is reversed, and so the aircraft is going to display you kind of bum information. It's really exactly a mirror image opposite of this. So really the runway is over here. This is your center line right here, which tells you where the aircraft is. And again, if you think of it like looking in a mirror right now, since we're heading the opposite direction of the runway, these should be on the other side. So the runway's here. But the altitude indicator is correct. If we were on approach right now, this is telling us that we should be much lower than we actually are. Because again, this is where the aircraft actually is. Again, the arrow or the diamond will eventually start to float upwards as we travel away from the 07 left. And that's part of the way that we know when to make our turn here, when that diamond is above where we are. Now to help us get to that point, we're going to descend down to 3,500 feet here. So just going to tell the autopilot to descend here. Now, in an actual approach scenario where you're actually descending from, let's say, flight level 300 or 30,000 feet, you will use your speed brake to help slow you down in your descent to maintain the speeds that you want. And that's deployed by using the slash button on your keyboard next to your shift key there. So we're not going to use it here because we're really not descending that dramatically. Now, you'll notice the diamond is coming up here, just like we talked about a second ago. This means that we are now below what's called the glide slope. Again, the glide slope is the angle of attack or the altitude profile that you should be at based off of what the frequency, the ILS frequency, is telling to your computers. All right, and we're going to go ahead and slow down to about 180 knots here as we get ready to make our turn. And we're going to drop flaps down to 20 degrees here for the approach. Now, ideally on the approach, we're going to want to be about 130 knots when we're over the runway threshold. But let's go ahead and make that 90-degree left turn. So we're going to turn to a heading of just about 160 here. The other thing that you want to do is you want to put the course for the runway here. So it's 07 left, which means it's a heading of CRJ-700. So now you'll notice the runway. The arrow tells you what direction the runway runs in. And this broken line here, the center part, is giving you the exact same information as this diamond is right here. So basically you'll notice that this is telling us that the runway is running from our right to our left, and we are to the left of the runway. It's out ahead of us here, which makes perfect sense because we're on a left pattern here to land and do some touch and goes. Alright, and you'll notice the green bar is going to start moving toward us. And you'll also notice the diamond's going to start to reflect correctly as we get closer to the runway. To give you a visual reference, that is the airport, Los Angeles, right there. Again, the runway is about right here. We're going to make a left 90-degree turn to intercept here, but this is called the base turn for your approach in this 07 left there. Alright, and at this point it's really a waiting game. We're going to probably slow down a little bit here, maybe bring it down to about 150. Let the aircraft slow down here. At this point we'll lower the gear. And now you'll notice the green line is going to start moving here. And when it does, quickly hit the nav button. Again, we've told the aircraft to listen to the navigational frequencies, or in other words, the ILS approach for the runway here. So what this does, the nav button is going to tell the aircraft to turn to line up with the runway. Now, right now, we haven't hit the approach button yet, which is the next step. We're going to wait till the vertical indicator, or the altitude indicator, the diamond right here, begins to move down towards where we are right now. And once that starts to move, then we'll hit the approach button, and the aircraft will completely fly itself, maintaining the proper glide slope as well as the proper heading to land on the runway. Now, unfortunately, the default FSX CRJ-700 doesn't actually give us a full auto land simulation, meaning you will need to land the aircraft manually even when doing an ILS approach, but you can actually use the ILS to go ahead and get you lined up perfectly, and then you can just take over about 500 feet from the runway, which is what I normally do here. I did hit the approach button there because, again, the purple diamond, the magenta diamond there, is descending towards the actual altitude of the aircraft. And don't be alarmed by the alignment here. The aircraft does take a little bit of time because it is a default aircraft. It's not a perfect simulation. It does take a second for it to get lined up. It's almost like threading a needle. So it's going to move to the left of the runway, then the right of the runway, but the whole time getting closer and closer and closer until it's lined up perfectly. And again, we do have the approach button lit up there, which means that the aircraft is going to start to descend now. Down here is a really important indicator. It's called your vertical speed indicator. You'll notice in VAFs when you land, it'll tell you exactly what your landing rate was. It's based off of this number. So you want your descent to be between 600 and 900 feet per minute there as you approach, just to make it a nice smooth approach. Again, you'll see the plane's automatically descending now. I'm not doing that manually. The plane is flying itself here because it's an ILS approach. And we're just to the left of the runway right now. So you'll notice we have a slight angle to the right here as we move to intercept the runway. We're going to slow it down even a little bit more, bring it down into the 140 range here. And you'll notice that we have a fairly level attitude right now. And what I mean by that is you'll notice that the plane isn't pitching down to descend. What's actually happening right now is the engines are actually providing your descent. And what I mean by that is you'll notice the throttles will be lowered or brought back. And what that does is when you're keeping the plane level, lowering your thrust, reversing or bringing your throttles back, will actually cause your plane to drop because you have less lift under the wings. And then to decrease your vertical speed, so again to go ahead and bring it back up to basically a level flight, you just increase the throttle. So you keep your nose exactly level. Again, use your flaps to provide you with some extra lift there at lower speed. Bring your speed down to 140. And again, use your throttles to actually control your vertical descent there. And I'll give you a visual of what I'm talking about here. You'll notice the throttles will go forward and backwards depending on whether the aircraft feels that it needs to decrease its descent rate or increase its descent rate. And when I manually take over here in a minute or so, that's exactly how I'll be controlling the descent of the aircraft. And I'm also going to show you a method for getting really good touchdown rates. Now, Mike over at Southwest, who runs basically our heavy-duty training virtual airline, one of our sister airlines here at Delta, he'll tell you that anything below 100 feet per minute landing rate is dangerous and should be an indicator that you're not a good pilot. Now, I personally, I view this as a fun game that, I want to get the lowest landing rate I can because I actually get a bonus, or you get a bonus in VAFs for having a really smooth touchdown. And it's important because you don't want to damage the gear. Any touchdown rate above 500 feet per minute, generally speaking, will actually damage the gear, and we actually have to, go in, repair the gear, pay for that. So this is why it's important that we learn how to land properly here. All right, and it looks like we're perfectly lined up here for the approach. Again, going back to that 2D view, just because it gives us a little bit better functionality, at least in my opinion. And it looks like we're just perfectly lined up. The winds are really in our favor here. You always want to land into the wind. What that does is gives you more lift under your wings and allows you to keep the aircraft stabilized as you make your approach in. If you land with the winds kind of hitting you what's called a crosswind from the left or the right, you will have to angle your plane to land. Or if you land with the winds coming from behind you, you're actually going to have some issues maintaining lift because the wind is actually working against you in that case. And it's just a mess, so you never want to do that. It's a very difficult process to land there. So you'll see that we have our visual indicators here. The ANSI lights on the left-hand side. One white, 3 red. Tells us that we're a little bit low, but I'm going to take over manual control now.
Don't sink.
All right, and going to go ahead and control the descent rate with the nose here just as we descend. Throttles are idle. Again, watching that vertical speed, trying to keep it as low as possible. All right, and now our gear is touched down. We've got the speed brakes deployed and reverse thrust engaged. Reverse thrust is used above 80 knots. Once you hit 80 knots, disengage the reverse thrust by moving your throttle forward. You engage the reverse thrust by holding the F2 button, and then using your brakes there to finish stopping there. And for taxi, I normally do use the virtual cockpit view. It's a little bit easier to get a frame of reference. But at this point, I'm going to bring the flaps back. I'm going to lower my speed brake here by hitting the slash button next to the shift key. And I'm making a nice smooth turn onto the taxiway. Now, in terms of keeping your nose wheel on the center line, the best way to do that is to actually look at your throttle. Your yoke. Your yoke right there, being on the center line, tells you exactly where your nose gear is. So you notice I can draw a straight line from the throttle, I keep calling it the throttle, the yoke, to that center line there. Very similar to driving a car. So let's look on the outside view here. And you'll see that our nose wheel is just about right on the line, which is right where we want to be. So at this point, we've pulled off the runway. We're going to advise tower that we're clear of 07 left and holding on taxiway Charlie 3 here. And then they're going to give us instructions to taxi to the gate. So that's how you complete some landing practice there. What I recommend is spending some time in your sim, going out and flying some patterns, and really getting comfortable with the characteristics of the aircraft. With the CRJ-700, you want to again just kind of give you a brief overview here. When you're lined up with the runway, you want to increase your throttles to 25%, make sure N1 matches up, and then proceed to move your throttles to the 100% firewall, basically. And at that point, you're going to take off, and as you pull up at 160 knots, you're going to go ahead and reduce thrust a little bit to maintain your speed, so you don't overspeed there and break through the speed limit of 250 knots under 10,000, and then proceed to fly your pattern. And as you're coming in, control your rate of descent with your throttles. Don't use the nose until you're right over the runway. At that point, about 50 feet over the runway, put your throttles to idle. Control your rate of descent by bringing your nose up. That's called flaring. And then at that point, you're able to control your vertical speed and really get a really soft landing. So this is actually my first tutorial video, and it's the first of many. We'll be doing a bunch here for you guys to kind of teach you how to fly here. But I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed taking a quick flight there, and I hope you enjoyed the beautiful Los Angeles FS Stream team scenery there. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks again for flying the DeltaVirtualAirlines.com.